The NHL schedule was released on Wednesday, and while there's no surprise, the Bruins will play 82 games. October is going to pack a bit of an emotional punch.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Thursday, July 17th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the podcast, we are going to discuss the release of the NHL schedule on Wednesday and some of the highlights for the Boston Bruins. We'll also touch specifically on the October schedule and see whether or not this team can get off to a decent start based on the opponents presented to them, highlighting a key matchup later in the month, which will feature the return of Brad Marchand to TD Garden, health permitting. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. That's on Blue Sky, X, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and it's all available as well on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Please do hit that subscribe button if you have not already. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for 20 years now. So yesterday, the National Hockey League announced the schedule for all 32 teams. They haven't released the regional and national broadcast information yet, but we do know on which dates the Bruins will be playing. And they're going to start the season on a back-to-back situation. On the road against the Washington Capitals on Wednesday, October 8th. The Capitals, of course, were one of the best teams in the NHL last season, losing in the second round to the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll have an early look at whether Alex Ovechkin and co. can keep it going after that resurgence last season. The next night, the Bruins will return home for their home opener, hosting Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks on October 9th. We'll get later into what the rest of October will hold and whether they can get off to a good start. In terms of longest homestands and road trips, mid-December, they'll play 5 straight home games. Well, they will host the Utah Mammoth, the Edmonton Oilers, Vancouver Canucks, Ottawa Senators, and Montreal Canadiens. And then they will later in December and into January embark on a 5-game road trip to Buffalo, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Seattle. They will spend most of January at home, and this could be a pretty key month for the Boston Bruins, similar to last year, actually, because you're going to have January where they will play 9 of 14 games at home, including another 5-game homestand over an 8-day stretch in the middle of the month, and that will lead into a month of February with a very reduced schedule. They only play 4 games that month because of a 3-week Olympic break. So we'll see where they're at in January because they won't have much time after that month to determine what their plan will be heading into the trade deadline. Will they be in a position to contend for a playoff spot? Will they be looking to sell off some assets once again? That January could be a big determining factor, and we'll take a look at that month coming up on another episode of the podcast. One big night to remember will be Sunday, February 1st. The Bruins will face the Tampa Bay Lightning at Raymond James Stadium for the 2026 Navy Federal Credit Union NHL Stadium Series. It will mark the Bruins' 6th NHL regular season outdoors, but their first stadium season appearance. All their other outdoor games have been either Winter Classic or that memorable Lake Tahoe game a few years ago, which probably my favorite so far. They're going to have some theme nights as well, beginning with Hockey Fights Cancer Night on October 23rd, Military Appreciation Night on 11/11, Hockey's for Everyone Night on January 22nd, and another notable aspect of the schedule is that they will play 13 of their 41 home games on weekends, which includes 5 matinee games. That will schedule also features the Black Friday matchup against the New York Rangers, their return to TD Garden after the Olympic break, which will be on the 26th of February, and the Bruins will conclude the regular season at TD Garden against the New Jersey Devils on April 14th. So that's kind of a big picture look at the schedule. But what's really most important is we know that, look, every team plays 82 games. What matters is kind of how they're spaced out, back-to-backs, and where they stand in relation to their opponents at any given time. You can project a schedule, look at games in January, but you don't know who's going to be in the lineup, what's going to happen between now and then. I thought it would be good to, as we did last summer, take kind of a month-by-month look at the schedule. We know the Bruins struggled last season, worst team in the Eastern Conference, and if they're looking to retool on the fly and get back into playoff contention, it will be important to get off to a good start. So let's take a look at the month of October and see if they're set up for success that month, and also key in on one specific game that will surely be a bit of an emotional minefield. We'll touch on all that here as the podcast continues. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt a bit easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. We looked at our spending and were surprised by how much we were spending on Starbucks or streaming services. Monarch Money helped us to put it all together and get a better look at our finances, take control, and reduce spending, increase savings. All you have to do is use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, let's take a look at the month of October and see whether or not our Bruins are set up for a strong start to the season. Unfortunately, the Bruins start the season with kind of an intense October that could go a long way in terms of setting the tone for the rest of Marco Sturm's first season as head coach. Let's start with the basics. 13 games total in the month of October, and we're not starting right from the beginning either. We're carving out a week to start, as the season doesn't begin until October 8th. So that's 13 games within the first, 23 days of the season. 2 back-to-backs right out of the gate. There's one, as I mentioned, at Washington and versus Chicago on the 8th and 9th. And then As part of a road trip later in the month, they will take on the Colorado Avalanche and the Utah Mammoth, both on the road, back-to-backs October 18th and 19th. That's a lot of early movement, not a ton of breathing room for a team still getting used to a new coaching staff, new systems, as well as some new players. 5 of the first 8 games are on the road, including a 3-game Western swing. I mentioned the 2 games back-to-back, Colorado and Utah. They will start that road trip a couple of days earlier with a game against Vegas on the 16th. So that's altitude, travel fatigue, Vegas, and quality opponents in a pretty compact window. That's going to be a very challenging 3-game stretch. It will be the first time the Bruins play the Utah Mammoth. You'll recall last year they were the Utah Hockey Club, and coming off a game against Colorado, the Mammoth are a team with playoff aspirations, a young team on the up and up. So that's going to be a difficult stretch for sure. The Bruins also face several important Eastern Conference and Atlantic Division opponents in October as well. They play Buffalo twice, and it will be incumbent upon them to win those games because Buffalo is, you can't say anybody finished below them in the standings, but Buffalo is a team that, if they want to rise back up into playoff contention, Buffalo is a team that is on the lower end of things, and they're going to have to pass. So getting 4 points out of those 2 games for the Bruins would be huge. They play the Tampa Bay Lightning on Columbus Day, one of those matinees I discussed earlier, October 13th. October 21st, they'll take on the Florida Panthers. We'll talk more about that game specifically coming up. They will also take on the Ottawa Senators, who were a playoff team last year, the New York Islanders, who landed the first overall pick and who could be improved under new general manager Matthew Darche. They brought in Jonathan Drouin, who I thought should have been a Bruins target for the top 6. If you're going to stay competitive in the Eastern Conference, you need to bank points in these head-to-head matchups. And a couple early losses to teams like Buffalo or the Islanders could dig a real hole pretty quickly in the standings. And when you did finish dead last in the conference last year, you can't really afford to drop games like that. One highlight off the ice will be Hockey Fights Cancer Night on October 23rd versus the Anaheim Ducks. Always a meaningful night for the organization and the fans. Expect the team to wear their special lavender warm-up jerseys, ceremonial puck drop, plenty of emotion in the building. They always take that time to have fans in the stands hold up the I Fight For signs. For me personally, my wife having gone through that battle several years ago now, my mom just recently, that's always an emotional night for me personally, and I'm looking forward to, watching that from a distance up here from my home. There's a big homestand opportunity from October 21st to October 30th to close the month. And you have the game against Florida that we'll touch on here in a moment. That Hockey Fights Cancer Night against the Ducks. Then they host the Ottawa Senators, the New York Islanders, and the Buffalo Sabres. And that's a window where they could really get rolling. If they can weather the early travel, come home at or near 500, this homestand is where they could make a nice little push to end the first month of the season. Again, you have a team in the Ducks who is rebuilding. The Islanders were outside of the playoff picture last year. The Sabres as well. The Ottawa Senators, will be looking to build off their success from last year. Won't be an easy out. And then, of course, there's the Florida Panthers, the two-time reigning Stanley Cup champions, who just so happen to have re-signed Brad Marchand to a 6-year contract. This is a game that everybody will have circled on their calendars, and it's a game that we will discuss specifically here as the podcast continues. We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. I love the panoramic seat view. We're going to see Dashboard Confessional and Goo Goo Dolls in a few weeks, and we know exactly what to expect when we get to Budweiser Stage in Toronto. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we're talking about the Bruins schedule release, specifically the month of October, and the highlight being the return of Brad Marchand to TD Garden on October 21st. Now, this, of course, isn't the first game between these two teams since the trade deadline. The trade was made with Marchand injured, and the Panthers did make an appearance at TD Garden following that deal, but Marchand was not in the lineup. He was able to recover, recoup, and then make a big splash for this team in the Stanley Cup playoffs en route to a Stanley Cup victory and a 6-year contract extension for the 37-year-old. So this will be his first game back at TD Garden, and it will be a very emotional return. You already know the resume. Stanley Cup champion with the Bruins, captain, 904 career points in black and gold, 15 years as a member of the Boston Bruins, the last remaining member of the 2011 championship core. And this will be one of those nights where TD Garden is emotionally charged in a way we rarely see during the regular season. I've seen some debate about whether he'll be booed, whether he'll be cheered. I mean, it's all but certain the Bruins will show a tribute video at some point during the game. Marchand will get one, two, several, perhaps standing ovations, and he deserves it. He gave everything to this team. He evolved from pest to perennial all-star, from agitator to captain. He matured right in front of our eyes, and by all accounts, he wanted to stay in Boston to finish his career. The Bruins said they had an appetite to do so as well, but they could not agree to a contract, whether it be term, valuation. I don't think anybody but Florida was going to give him 6 years. The valuation's a bit less than what perhaps we would have expected, but he was taken care of by the Florida Panthers, and he'll be a member of that team for, if he plays throughout the remainder of a contract, 6 full seasons out of a possible 2021. So this isn't just kind of a coda on his career, but this will be a significant chapter in Brad Marchand's career when all is said and done. So, yeah, we have the memories. We have so much appreciation for what Brad Marchand did as a member of the Bruins. But once the puck drops, you better believe Marchand's going to do everything he can to beat his former team, to show Don Sweeney that he should have kept him around. But the Bruins, of course, will be out there looking to make a statement against the Stanley Cup champions and trying to signal that their down season was kind of a one and done thing. If you think Marchand's above chirping a rookie, crashing the net on Jeremy Swayman, chirping Pasta or some of the other vets, think again. Like, that's going to happen. Florida, still a powerhouse, of course. 2-time Stanley Cup champions. Dominant against the Bruins recently, knocking them out of the playoffs in 2023, 2024. That embarrassing victory in opening night last night. This will be a major test for the Bruins' identity in the post-Marchand era. Can David Pastrnak rise to the moment and take over? Will the revamped forward group with Elias Lindholm, Victor Arvidsson, Tanner Jeannot show it's capable of replacing that edge and leadership? You can bet Jeannot is going to be out there trying to mix it up with Marchand, Sam Bennett, and company, trying to make a statement that his contract was well earned. Can the team hold their emotional composure and compete hard without letting the moment get to them? Last season, opening night, we saw them kind of chasing the Panthers, looking to make a physical statement, and they got caved on the scoreboard. It's more than just 2 points in the standings up for grabs. It's kind of a referendum on how the Bruins are moving forward and whether this new core will be able to take the torch from a guy who wore the Spoke Bee with pride for over a decade. If they can win this one, especially at home, it could be a confidence-building moment that sets the tone for the rest of the season. Either way, it's going to be kind of a must-watch, obviously. Now, if we go game by game, you could probably pencil in the opening night game against a stronger Washington team as a loss. The home opener, hopefully a win. Same against Buffalo. Maybe a loss to Tampa Bay in game 4. That 3-game road trip is going to be very tough. That could be 3 straight losses if we're being very honest, as could the Florida game. So in order to even reach or get to 500 by the end of the month, they're going to have to beat Anaheim, Ottawa, the Islanders, and Buffalo in order to come out of that month with some semblance of success. If they can come out around 500, especially considering the West Coast road trip and an emotional return game versus Florida, that's a pretty strong start under Marco Sturm. Jeremy Swayman is going to have to step up. It would keep them firmly in early playoff contention and suggest the offseason changes are clicking. But if they drop a bunch of games, it could be an early hole that they get into that they may not be able to recover from, because it's a pretty tough schedule there, especially with Washington, Tampa Bay, Vegas, Colorado, Utah, Florida, even Ottawa on the schedule. You have only Chicago, a couple games versus Buffalo, which could be saving points, Anaheim, and the Islanders that are, supposedly should be winnable games. Anyways, that's a look at October, which will be highlighted by the game against the Florida Panthers. Tomorrow's podcast will take a look at November and December and how the Bruins could fare heading into the holiday break. Hockey's kind of around the corner. A couple months until training camp. These are the dog days of summer. I'm trying to keep it all rolling here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. Please do keep it locked on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Subscribe if you have not already. Check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. There'll be league-wide reaction from all over local experts breaking down the schedule. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. And please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.